Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Hello, everyone. We will probably start. We're going to give people another minute to join and then we will start. But thank you so much for tuning in. We've got a very interesting 45 minutes ahead. And if we just let a few more people join, then we'll get cracking straight away. I'm Matthew Wood, Director of Operations at EFMD, and delighted to be joined by a good friend of mine, Andrew Crisp from CarringtonCrisp. We've been working together now for 15 years on a variety of research projects, looking at the future of education, the future of MBAs, masters, etc., etc. And today we're going to talk about branding and what a website should do to attract and engage your potential students. And I think there's a lot from what we're going to provide today that is very useful that you can apply straight away. So I hope it's going to be a useful session for you. So if we just give 30 seconds or so for the 1 o'clockers and then we will start. So thanks very much for joining us. We're due to have 107 people, and at the moment we're 20. So we're just, that's why we just give it a minute if you don't mind. Thank you. Okay, Delphine, I think we can get cracking, don't you? Okay, a great pleasure to introduce Andrew. He started life out as an advertising guru and then slipped into CarringtonCrisp and higher education marketing. He's very knowledgeable about the sector, very well connected with the sector. And as I say, we've been working in a great partnership for 15 years. Time flies, as they say, when you're having fun. But I'll pass on to Andrew now. And what we aim to do is have a presentation probably for about 20-25 minutes. And then, we'll have a Q&A, and please put questions into the chat. Just to let you know, we are recording so that you can have a copy of the recording afterwards, and also that Andrew's slides will be available, and we'll send them out to you also with a poll at the end of the session. And Delphine will follow up with an email providing everything that you need. But the more questions, the better. What I would also say is, have a look around who's there and ping each other with a chat and say, hi, how are you? Hope you're doing well. We have EFMD's built on communities. So we have a marketing comms community. We have the MBA community, we have the master's community, we have exec ed. So, what we'd like you to do is obviously embrace and be involved as much as possible as you can with EFMD, because not only does it offer personal development and then you meet people and you learn things, but there's a professional development. And also, you are your brand, you're the brand of your school. So you're representing your school when you're out and you're meeting people. And I'm not sure we're going to get together this year, but fingers crossed and vaccine, etc. Next year, we might get back to some kind of face-to-face. And obviously, we'd welcome you at all the events and like to see you. It's a very strong community. The resilience that the network has shown in the last 18 months has been truly remarkable. And we're good, decent people, and we want to get together and we want to see you and we want to share. And there is no other industry like this where there is an openness to new ideas and sharing best practice. So on that note, I will hand over to Andrew and he'll take us through the slides, and then we'll have a good debate afterwards. But we will stick to 45 minutes. So we'll keep an eye on the clock as well. So thanks very much, and over to you, Andrew.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Matthew. Pleasure to be here, and as you say, it's a relationship that's now extended, I think, over 15 years. I'm going to just share my screen so people can see the slides. There we go, perfect. So this morning, or this evening, this afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, I know we had somebody who wanted to join from New Zealand, but I think they may be asleep by now. But I'm going to talk primarily about the findings from two studies, the business of branding and GenerationWeb. And these are long-running studies taking place on an annual basis, going back more than a decade now. I think in the case of the business of branding, probably closer to 17 years. So we have a wealth of data, and I'll talk about this year's results primarily. At the end, I have a couple of slides from a new study we've just completed with LinkedIn, which highlight the ever-growing importance of brand in higher education. And I'll talk to those when we get to them. Within the business of branding study, we look at both individual school as well as country. A lot of students in higher education, business education, are studying internationally, and I think that's important to do that. So we'll talk about that, and then in the GenerationWeb study, it's more focused on the how. How do students find out about you? What impressions do they have from your websites? How are they using social media? And we'll talk about that at that point. So the good news to begin with, 80% say they would recommend their business school to prospective students, 75% satisfied with the quality of the course, and 72% with the experience as a student. Broadly speaking, the message here is that schools are delivering on the brand promise. They're getting out there, and what that brand promise is about, and you'll see that through the slides as we progress, is all about career in so many cases. So there's more to it than that. It's not just that, but you see that at that point, students think their course is helping to improve their career prospects 84% of the time. But if we think business schools have a wider mission, if we think business schools are not just about students, but business in the round, then perhaps there are one or two doubts. As it says, when they're asked if their business school helps businesses grow, only 30% definitely agree. So work in progress, certainly, in terms of a clear understanding and getting those communications and messages right for different audiences. But I said career was key, and you see it everywhere in the data. Whether it's when students are considering where to study, they want somewhere that will accelerate their prospects, but also not necessarily steer them in one particular direction. It's about more than working in finance. It's about more than being a consultant. There's a multiplicity of opportunities that students are interested in, and that's growing every year. Career is 4 of the top 5 issues when respondents think about rankings and about how assessing quality of provision is undertaken. And satisfaction, as already suggested, is heavily dependent on career issues, especially the quality of career advice and preparing students. So it's absolutely everywhere. It's an inescapable piece. But I said it's about more. So how are schools perceived by prospective students? Well, top 2 answers clearly about, I've told you already, accelerating, transforming my career prospects, promoting diverse career paths. But it's about more than that. So technology, enterprise, and interestingly, social responsibility. This study, as I say, is 17 years old now. And if we asked these questions just 3 or 4 years ago, that focus on social responsibility that 1 in 6 said was important when they're thinking about their provider offer probably wouldn't have been there, or if it was negligible. So that's definitely new. The 3rd one on this is where they're looking at how digital transformation is taking place. Bringing together technology and management skills is increasingly important. Students absolutely understand that every business today is a technology business, not because they are producing technology, but that they're using technology, and bringing that together with management is so important if they're going to progress in their careers. And this idea of entrepreneurship, 18% want a culture of enterprise engagement with startups and social entrepreneurs. I think more than anything else, perhaps one of the things that's come out of the past 15 months is a growing interest in being your own boss. If you can work from anywhere, then why do you want to work for a big company? Maybe you're a consultant, maybe you're a freelancer, maybe you're part of a startup, but entrepreneurship is a theme that seems to be running through a lot of discussions with students. But there's also some other interesting things coming up. So we asked students what already enhances their business school or what might enhance their business school. And again, yes, careers, their internship, work experience, live consulting projects, international study trips, startup, small business accelerator program. But that second one down, mental health support for students, just as the social interaction, that social aspects of society are coming to the fore, so mental health has come to the fore. Again, asked this survey, look back through the data 3 or 4 years ago, it simply didn't appear. And now 1 in 5 are saying this is an important aspect for them as they go forward and think about where they're going to study or where they're currently studying. We have a question where we ask the students what attributes they associated with their chosen business school when applying. And the top 5 are interesting reading. First of all, a high ranking. No surprise in that one. Secondly, support available during the inquiry and application process. So brand is like a journey in some respects. Yes, this is an initial marketing burst. You see the website, you see advertising, whatever it might be, but then it becomes more human. It's about the relationship that people build up, and that experience during the application process is absolutely key. Of course, when you get to university, when we get back to universities anyway, the on-school, on-campus facilities, of course, are important. And then again, this human level, a high level of support to help students complete their studies successfully. Somebody made a comment, it's slightly tongue-in-cheek, but think about it, it's true. During the pandemic, the most important service that's being provided by universities is the IT help desk. If you're studying remotely, you need to know that if the technology falls over at some point, there's somebody there to help you and to help you quickly. And so a different strand to a university's brand that perhaps hasn't been there before. And for international students, recognition in their home country. Brand again to the fore. If this institution is well known, then employers will know it. My parents will know it. My peers will know it. It's important for me to have that brand mark as part of my learning journey. We asked students how ranking should be measured, and about 1 in 6 chose these elements here. And the first 4 are all about career. No surprise, percentage of students employed within 6 months of graduation. Salary increase of graduates, percentage of students having an internship of more than 1 month, employer ratings. Then 2 interesting ones. The last one, the impact of school in its local community, very much speaks to the issue I was talking about a moment ago, this idea of society becoming more to the fore, of seeing business and its impact across society rather than simply in the business community. But also research is there. So the number of high quality research papers published by school faculty, and it's an enormous challenge, of course, to communicate some of that research on occasions, to get that message clearly across to a wider community rather than simply just other researchers. So a message for those working in Marcoms that there are other audiences, other stakeholders that are important. But again, career we see very much to the fore. Moving the agenda on to international recruitment and students' perceptions of where to study and why to study, there'll probably be no surprise in this list. Here are the top 5 countries that students say they would consider when thinking about international study. What's interesting here is Canada has very much been on the rise, and it will become a little clearer in just a moment, perhaps why that is. We did see Singapore in the top 5 last year. It was early in the pandemic. Singapore was having for want of a better phrase, a good pandemic. The cases were under control, their track and trace seemed to be under control. It's then slipped back a little bit, but in terms of the Asian marketplace, Singapore is certainly a popular destination and popular with a Western population as well, but not quite in the top 5 this year. The question becomes, why would you not study overseas, I suppose? So how can that market be grown? Well, inevitably the pandemic is causing people's concern, cost of study as well. Questions about safety as well, on a personal level, but also the environment for international students, and inevitably for some language skills. Some countries, language is a barrier and is important. We ask about 17 countries, and we ask students who take part in the survey to rank them on the issues in the left-hand column. And some interesting things come out of this. Switzerland has had a good year. So Switzerland they're most likely to agree it has a stronger dynamic economy and offers an attractive lifestyle. I suggested there might be a reason for Canada's strength in the rankings, and it's most likely to be considered easy to get a visa for study. However, the USA is most likely to be considered to have a good range of quality universities and business schools, but the flip side is it's most likely to be considered an expensive place to study, whereas Germany is least likely to be considered an expensive place to study. Japan ranks highly on offering a sense of adventure, and with the Olympics this summer, will have a lot of visibility internationally that it can build on to promote an international positioning. And you have there in the right-hand column, India, Russia, and China occurring on a regular basis as being the least likely to be positively regarded in a number of these cases. Now, whilst each of them don't have large international student populations, all have strategies to grow those international populations. And there is a suggestion that certainly in this data, there's going to be a lot of work to be done. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but there's a lot of work to be done to attract international students, and perceptions are so important at that initial level when somebody says, where would I go and study? And where do these perceptions come from? Well, print media does still play a part. We find The Economist and the FT to the fore, but it's actually the digital tools that are very much to the fore. And you'll be no surprise here, Google, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, obvious ones, but consistently bbc.com as well. This is the international site of the BBC. And we find that even when you strip out UK respondents, that site still has considerable traction amongst prospective students and is used or was used widely by international universities advertising in banner ads and other things to attract students. Of course, in all of this, the thing that is probably more important than all of these elements is the University or Business School website. And I want to talk a little bit about that now. So when we ran the GenerationWeb study this year, 51% of those taking part told us that they usually go online from their smartphone, with only 34% saying they use a laptop, and it was in single figures for a desktop. Why is that important? Well, screen size more than anything else. How are you going to get your message across on a smartphone screen? Of course, people can scroll, people can swipe, people do all sorts of things, but that initial impact when they land on your website on a small screen is incredibly important. And when they do land, what information is it they're looking for? Well, inevitably course information, but after that, 5 other things. So what's it going to cost me to study? Is there any support available through scholarships? Where am I going to live? What are my living costs? And we're back to career services. So it's very much if you like, an ROI calculation. What is it going to cost me? And what is the return I'm going to get on my investment? And this is a clear focus for a lot of students, and especially for international students. But what more are they looking for? This year, 75% of respondents said they watch video on school websites, up from just 57% last year. Around 2/3 are searching for business school information on social networking sites. That was up slightly. And the last 2 are indicators of what's been happening during the pandemic. So 56% now use live chat sessions on school websites, the ability at any time, potentially in any time zone, to get online and chat to somebody. And 53% say they've taken part in live webinars on topical or academic issues with a business school. So a way for business schools at a relatively low cost to put their content in front of prospective students, to tell them about the things they might study, to demonstrate their thought leadership, to talk about how they get careers for their students, whatever it might be. These live webinars where students can dip in for an hour anytime around the world are becoming increasingly popular as a way to generate interest through websites and hopefully lead to recruitment of students, at least applications. And what about the social side of things? I touched on this a moment ago, but just a little more detail. We find Instagram is the most widely used social networking tool, and certainly when we've run advertising campaigns recently on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is, in terms of lead generation, outpacing Facebook 2 to 1. But they're using WhatsApp, they're using Twitter, Snapchat is there. LinkedIn may look slightly lower, but it tends to be stronger with postgraduate audiences. And when you strip out data on a country by country basis, typically we find that more than 50% of Chinese students are using Weibo or WeChat. So it's really important to understand different cultural aspects of social media. How do they use social media? Well, about a third saying they're using it to get a feel of the school's culture, but 15% don't use them at all. Similarly, a third think social channels are essential to get an authentic view of a business school, but 8% think they add very little and largely disregard them. But this authentic view is very important. Sometimes students and prospective students are quick to disregard what appears on your website. But on social media, when they can see a current student, or an alumnus, a prospective student, somebody who's not promoting the school as such, talking about their experience, what it's like day to day, what they got from their experience, what career they're now doing as a result of their experience, that comes across as authentic and can be incredibly powerful in putting across this message about a prospective school. In this year's GenerationWeb study, we grouped the websites into 3 types of site. And I just want to show you what those 3 types are. It's very interesting, I think. So first of all, you've got 3 sites here from different parts of the world: UNSW in Australia, Miami Herbert in North America, ESCP Business School in Europe. And they're all leading with a message about the future, but not necessarily about your career. In fact, none of these are really specifically about career, but they are trying to position the schools as looking to the future, as being part of the future, and therefore a good place to go and study. So making an impact in accelerating world there, focusing on the programs. Miami Herbert, tomorrow's leaders are built today, transforming global business and society, really emphasizing that message that we had before. And similar lines, ESCP, leading a sustainable future starts by choosing responsible paths. So responsible management being a really important component of a lot of schools' offers today, and something that we see in our master's and MBA studies as being incredibly important for prospective students. The second group tend to be selling something specific. So here we have the University of Queensland leading with a price reduction in their short courses. We have Strathclyde selling an upcoming webinar, going back to this idea of interactive webinars, and Birmingham City looking to sell their undergraduate open days. Maybe selling is too strong a word, but they all have a particular item that they're promoting on the homepage of the website, and then leading into more specific information. And then there's a third group. I've used the slogan 3 is a magic number. For those of you who've seen previous presentations, there used to be an idea that every course brochure, every prospectus of a university had to have a photo in it called 3 under a tree. It was a sunny day, there were 3 students sitting on a grassy bank, laughing and smiling, and there had to be at least 1 man, 1 woman, and one ethnic minority student. And you can see straight away in the pictures that appear, certainly the Loughborough and the HEC Paris sites, even in the Adam Smith Business School site, although it's not students, it's people at a groundbreaking ceremony for a new building, 3 people again, showing that diversity. And then very quickly, certainly on the Loughborough and HEC sites, you can see on the homepage links to program information. So there are different approaches here and different positionings, therefore, of business schools and different brand identities that come across. Each are equally valid. And of course, it's very easy to switch between them. These are not constant. These will evolve throughout the year, particularly those that are selling particular activities and programs. And I said I wanted to conclude with 2 slides about the future. So we've just completed a new study with LinkedIn on the future of lifelong and executive education. And I think there's some really interesting findings about brand. So first of all, becoming more important for employers as online learning grows. 81% of employers, and this was a study of 500 plus employers worldwide, said they're looking to build long-term relationships with providers to build understanding of their business and maximize impact from learning. And then 2/3 that location of a learning provider will become less important as online provision becomes more sophisticated. So as an employer, I can choose a provider almost anywhere in the world. Geography becomes far less important in that decision making. But I also want a provider who understands us, complements our brand, respects our values, and is aligned with them. And so that's very important going forward, that brand is recognized in that way. And similarly, for individual learners, particularly around this issue of portability of qualification. So almost 2/3, so it's important that any future learning they undertake is with a provider with an international brand reputation, and a similar sort of number that location of their provider will become less important as online provision becomes more sophisticated. All of a sudden today, you're studying, you're living in one part of the world, you're working, you don't want to give up your job. The opportunity used to be to go and get a qualification from a local provider. Today, that's not necessarily true. You can study with somebody on the other side of the world, continue working, not give up your job, not have those travel costs, not have those accommodation costs, and get a qualification from a top recognized brand provider. And why is that important? Because the next time you apply for a new job, you want that qualification. Perhaps it's a digital badge, perhaps it's a micro-credential, perhaps that's a little bit uncertain for the employer. But if it comes from a brand that they recognize, that makes life a lot easier for you in terms of a job application. So we're back to career. We're back to that theme that runs right throughout this research. How can a provider brand support my career? How can it help me with my career? How can it make my investment of time and money worthwhile for my future career? And at that point, I'm going to stop talking and open up for any questions.
Andrew, super, thanks. Excellent presentation. Career. I mean, I think this is a message we've got to be saying, and certainly for the Marcoms people, from my view, is that the linkage between admissions with Marcoms, with career, and alumni is just absolutely vital. And I'm not sure if they're working in silos or they are quite closely connected, because often, unfortunately, career services centres are seen as a cost rather than actually the output that is very much required. But so that's great. We can come back to that. But I have two very nice questions. So from Aisha and Celine, and the first one is, could you just give a view on the sample breakdown of the students? But then adding to that, Celine, as I said, again, around the breakdown and profiles of the students who took part, but as somebody, she's working marketing and executive masters. Is this relevant for the executive masters? For me, it's absolutely vital. And, you know, if you're doing an executive masters, the chances are you've already got a fairly decent job, or you just want to do the upskilling, but you might be looking to change. And I think this is where, you know, if the school can hit home about the corporate relationships, the partnerships, the ability to make those changes, that stands very highly on the list. So yeah, if you could just give us a bit on the sample, that'd be great.
Yeah, Business of Branding was about 2,500 responses. GenerationWeb was about 1,000 responses. Both samples are current students. I would think, off the top of my head, the majority of the current students are current undergraduates who would therefore be thinking about a master's degree, but you also have master's and MBA students in those samples. Both are very international. I think the Business of Branding had respondents from around 70 countries, GenerationWeb from around 30 countries. Specifically in terms of Celine's question for executive masters, I'd point to this new report we have coming out very shortly, The Future of Lifelong and Executive Education. There will be a summary report available to download from our website in the next few days. And I suggest that would be very useful reading for that audience group.
Okay, thanks. And actually a very nice question from Sayora. Have you seen trends over the last 3 years? Obviously, we're all living and trying to cope with a global pandemic, but anything that stands out to you in the last 3 years that might have changed, or differences? I was struck with the slides on just, you go to business school because you want a job. And I don't think schools do or explain that as well. And I mean, I've looked at some websites, we had a chat on Monday before we had this meeting. I looked on various sites, and I don't see the homepage with an alumni on, or with an opportunity on, or a video presentation of this is how this school has changed my life. And I think that's one of the things with the Marcoms professionals that you should be looking at. And I also agree with you. I know the University of Phoenix, if you land on their site and put your number in, within 30 minutes, someone calls you. 30 minutes, because it knows that this is a hot prospect and they want to respond. And I think that live chat, that responsiveness, that helpfulness for the process, because it's a major decision people are making, it's massive. And I think schools need to be very aware that, who's clicking on your site and how you're going to help them, how you're going to respond to them. And again, I'm a big fan of having ambassadors at all levels, and MBA, exec ed, whatever, but people that they can talk to. And again, another thing is, if you're running a class, let people join the class, let them see what it's like. I think the openness and transparency, and we talked about this, the trust in the school, because it's a major decision, has to be at the forefront. And I know that schools do a great job, but these are the areas going forward that I think they're going to have to work on quite strongly.
I think in terms of trends, Matthew, the two words I'd use, society and video. From a marketing point of view, video has certainly become far more significant in recent years as a marketing tool, whether that's highly polished, top of the range, here's our little promo about our university, but more importantly, quite often, the video that appears on social media that an individual user, and coming back to it builds that authenticity and trust that Matthew was just talking about. So video very much to the fore. Society, in as much as more and more students are saying to us, they want to see business not in isolation, but in terms of its impact right across society. So they want to know, yes, of course, what the university is doing itself, but more about how it connects to its local community, about the impact it's having in the region where it's based, about how it impacts internationally. All of this has been interrupted to a certain extent by the pandemic. But the smarter institutions are still working away at this and looking at how they can take that impact online, as well as physically doing it when the time allows again, and when circumstances allow again. So I think those are the two big things. And we see, as I mentioned, we have a study of prospective masters and prospective MBA students that we run also with the EFMD. And within both of them, in the last 2 years, we've seen this issue of responsible management as being a core part of the content in MBA and master's programs absolutely blast off. As you're talking 60–70% now, so it's very important. This is part of their studies, and so it has to be also followed up with evidence from the institution so that they can say it's part of their brand.
Okay, super, fully agree. Just a nice question here from Sharmista. Is there any evidence of students looking for an inclusive environment where international students don't feel like a minority in the classroom and are taught also by a multicultural faculty? I get the idea of the question. Obviously there's a lot of international businesses, some key markets in China and India, and we all know that they're massive markets. But I think it's the question of how do we, or what should we be doing to embrace them in so that they feel part of the culture of an organization, rather than it's the international group and that they all sit together. So any thoughts on that?
It's a very difficult one. If anything, we've just done a project for an institution where they said it's the domestic students who feel like the minority, because 90% of the students in the classroom were international. So I think it works both ways. It's all about how do you build diversity? How do you build inclusiveness? And of course, that can go back to recruitment in terms of getting people from different countries and having limits to a certain extent on the number you have from certain countries. But one technique that I heard of, I think it was the University of Sussex told us with their international students, they were very conscious in the classroom that when a professor asked a question, an international student whose first language wasn't English, is translating in their head back to their home language, thinking about a question or an answer, translating back into English, and then are ready to answer. Well, by the time that's all happened, the student who has English as a native language has already answered. And so they feel excluded. So the University of Sussex started having a live Twitter feed in the lecture theatre where somebody could type in a question as it was being discussed. And so immediately you're bringing somebody in, you're bringing them into the conversation, and you're using a tool and technique that they feel very comfortable with, because that this audience of 18 to 28-year-olds, technology is all pervasive in their lives. They're using it for every part of their life. So why not use it to build that inclusivity in the classroom? There are other things, but I think that was a nice indicator of the way you can do these things.
Okay, very good. Another question which is quite specific for the Middle East, but I think again, just it is again all about brand, but how can MBA programs in the Middle East compete with Western ones to attract applicants? And I know there's some remarkable schools in the Middle East, of which many are members of EFMD, and they do brilliant things. But, my answer to that would be just really focus on what you're specializing in and what you bring. And I think just compelling that across and getting that message across, and also there is a huge pool out there. But over to you, Andrew. At some points on that, you've been marketing MBA programs for a long time. So what you've enjoyed is great.
I'm tempted to say get in touch offline and we'll do a project for you. But the short answer, well, there's a couple of things to say. We've worked extensively with the Allianz School of Business at the American University of Beirut. And I think one of the things that was important there was thinking about, what are the things that we bring to the marketplace that others don't. And so, of course, part of that is the regional expertise. It's we know this region better than anyone else. So if you want to do business in this region, then where better that you could go to get that experience. And I think I go back to when we first started CarringtonCrisp, to a certain extent, we were the same message. We worked for INSEAD in Singapore. They just introduced the tagline, the business school for the world. We were testing that with a group of students, and there was a German student there. He'd left his job in BMW, he was doing the MBA, and we said, well, why are you here in Singapore? And he said, well, I think Asia is the future, and this is a safe place to do Asia. So I think there's a message there that says, wherever you are in the world, there will be something that makes you different, something that makes you unique, that makes you special. Finding what that is, and then finding a way to package that and communicate that to potential audiences is certainly the way forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I know obviously we're closely linked to CEIBS, but they're basically saying we will bring you the world, but we'll also bring you China. Yeah. And it's worked extremely well for them with their tagline. A couple of good questions. Thanks, Fanny. Do you observe country-specific effects in your results? And did you ask questions about student perceptions of AI tools, chat box? Especially, do you capture a COVID effect of non-human tools? And I think that for me is one of the worst things. You get these bots and all you want to do is speak to someone or speak to a person. I think COVID has just hit home how we want that human touch. And, schools that just have I've used other things, not schools, but, it's just a sort of an AI robot, and it's just useless. And I think, that personal touch, it might cost you a bit more, it might be more time consuming, but it means absolutely so much more. So any thoughts on that? And then the last question from Jana is, did we include or have we got any input from the African continent in the survey, which perhaps we might? I will just give a plug that EFMD's got a wonderful Middle East and African network. It is outstanding, and we're very close with the African Association of Business Schools. We run EDAF, which is EFMD Deans Across Frontiers, about developing schools all around the world. So it's a passion for us, and we're very closely connected. So if you have colleagues looking at the Middle East and Africa, then we definitely have a community that would be very valuable for you. So anyway, Andrew, over to you.
Yeah, no, first Fanny's question. Yeah, we do see some country-specific results in the data, although I do find increasingly that the world over, this age group of 18 to 25 have a lot of things in common as well. particularly their use of technology. But as I mentioned in the survey, certainly in terms of the use of social media, it would be an obvious one where there are differences around the world, both in terms of the tools they're using and to a certain extent how they're using them. I think Matthew's point about chatbots is an interesting one. Yes, I've been frustrated as well at times, but I think they also do have a place, particularly with time zone differences, people not being available on occasions. University of Arizona is a great example, but not everybody has the resources to do that. And so there can be a place. What I would say is, are you reviewing what people are asking? Are you improving as a result of it? It's a little bit like FAQ sections on websites. They were very popular a few years ago, then they went down a little bit, but actually we've seen a resurgence because people are being smarter about their use. So they're looking at the questions that they're getting asked, and then they're tailoring their FAQs to the things that are coming out regularly. So people have that way in. But I think nothing can beat that human touch, as you say. In terms of Africa, yes, we always make sure we have a sample, particularly with the lifelong executive education study, the sample is sufficiently large that we can do some statistical analysis. So again, Janine, if you want to get in touch, let us have an email. We can send you some data about that.
Okay, that's the last of the, unless anybody has a question that they want to ping in, with 4 minutes to go. So I'm going to put you slightly on the spot, Andrew. Obviously, in the openness of sharing and ideas, I like the website. I'd like to focus on that. But, could you just give 3 tips to our colleagues here from the Marcom's world of what needs to be on their website as of next Monday? Because for me, the trust and honesty, and just say, look, the fees are this, you're going to pay this, it costs this much to live in an apartment in Rotterdam or Brussels or Vienna or Boston. And that honesty, people want to know, and parents want to know, because they're often involved in that decision, certainly at the undergrad and even post-grad. So, if you've got 3 pointers for us, and then we'll see if there's one last question before we finish, but that'd be most helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought when you said you were going to put me on the spot, you were going to ask me for the score in the England-Denmark match tonight.
Well, we know it's 2-0 to England, so that's fine. So don't worry about that. I'm
not sure I can predict that with any accuracy, I'm sad to say. In terms of websites, I think there are 3 things. Cost, career, campus. So what is it going to cost me to study? And not just the fees, but as you said, the cost of living. Career, how can I find about the potential careers that I can get if I study with you and if I study a particular subject, whether that's alumni case studies, whether that's employer endorsements, whatever it is. And then campus, what is the experience going to be like? We do find in our studies, international students do want to travel again. They want to get through the pandemic and get out there and see the world. So telling them about what your campus is like, having students telling you about the great facilities, about what it's like to be there, about the human experience is incredibly powerful. And I would say that those 3 C's absolutely to the fore. And perhaps just add one other thing. Matthew, you'll know I've said this many times before, and it's something that came out of I think the first or second GenerationWeb study we ran a long time ago. Don't put the dean on your homepage. It's a waste of space. That space is so much more valuable for other things that we've talked about today. And dare I say, nobody needs to see yet another photo of the dean. By all means, have them there somewhere on your site. It's important, certainly for a particular audience, to see a very senior person welcoming people, but don't do it on the homepage. You've got more important messages.
Yeah, I completely agree. Unfortunately, the deans, we did blacklist them about 10 years ago, and that's continued. Listen, we're going to finish with a super last question from Ed. And this is an area that I work very closely with John Alexi with the responsible research in business and management. And the whole idea is that research is relevant for society and the grand challenges that we all face in life. But Ed's question is, was there anything in your research about the role of thought leadership in brand building? And just before you answer that, because then we can finish up quite nicely, the University of Melbourne a few years ago stopped all print advertising. They stopped it and they hired a journalist. And what they said was the journalist would then work with the faculty to make sure that the research was relevant. And the number of outlets and hits they got from that work of working and showing the thought leadership outsold any of the print media budget by tenfold. And I think one of the biggest problems with schools is they do absolutely remarkable things, but they only tell themselves, and that needs to be a message that's out much more. So you have a minute, Andrew, to answer that, but Ed, great question, and I fully support it.
Very quickly, it was obviously there in the rankings question. It was there in the engagement with online webinars. But one quick story, we've done quite a lot of work with Rotterdam School of Management over the years, and a few years back, they set up, so they did some research with corporates to ask if people in corporates ever read the research papers they published. And the answer came back pretty much no. In fact, there was a joke at the time that only 5 people ever read them. So there was the person who wrote them, there were a couple of people who helped them write them, there was a person who reviewed them, and there was a mother of the person who wrote them, and that was it. And so what they started doing was they started turning their best research into short videos and short articles, and they had a specific section on their website, it's still there today, called Discovery. And typically now they'll get 600, 800, 1,000 people looking at a video. And those are people who are working in organizations who might commission programs, who might go on programs themselves. So they are growing the reach of their research and thought leadership, and also getting a commercial advantage from it.
A great way to finish. Thank you, Andrew. Much appreciated, and always good to see you. 45 minutes, we're done, my friends. So listen, take care. Thanks for joining us. We're going to probably do another something in September, so we'll make sure that you're involved and engaged. All I can say is have a very nice summer. Please try and get yourself away from a screen and a phone and a WhatsApp, and look after yourselves. I mean, the world's a very difficult place, but we're a great community. There's a super spirit amongst us. And we hope to see you, and that you keep engaged with EFMD. And if we can help you, I mean, ping me any messages you like, connect on LinkedIn. Very happy to chat and help. And obviously also with Andrew, you know, he's very, very visible in the social media world. And as and when we have more research and outlets and papers, we'll pass them on. But keep well, keep safe, keep smiling, and take very good care. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.